Good evening, garage tuners. Phil here, back out in the shop. It's been a little while since I've been out here. My cold was nasty. It kind of went away. It got crappy again. I'm still feeling a little clogged up and gunky, but I want to do some stuff this weekend, and I need to prepare for that now if I want to be able to get the parts here in time. The car has sat for a few days since it ran last, and I can see a little more coolant down here in my coolant bucket than I'd like. Just a couple of drops. And I can see it's leaking a little bit from the top of the thermostat housing. There's a small amount on the bottom. So I'm gonna loosen those screws, not today, but when I really come out here to work on stuff, and kind of like reset that and try and snug it back up again. And if that doesn't work, then I'll take it off and re-RTV it. We also see some oil here on the floor. And that is dripping from the oil filter relocator, these plugs on this side. So again, not a huge deal. I should be able to just snug those up and everything should be great. I'm not worried about that. Additionally, in preparation for working on the Skyline, I ordered a GTR style wing for it. It came from Japan with this Nismo. This is a Nismo wing, according to the auction sheet. And it came with this, and it's very period correct, but I don't care for it. I've never liked it. So I'm going to take this off and put a GTR style wing on the back here, and I think that'll fit the car a lot better. I'll paint the actual wing and the uprights red. I might paint the uprights black, we'll see, but to match the car. And then it's got a carbon fiber rear blade, so I think that'll look neat with the black of the hood and the carbon fiber, the roof and the carbon fiber of the hood, carbon fiber mirrors and that kind of stuff. I need to take off the carbon fiber vinyl here, which, if I'm not mistaken, is actually a factory option for some reason. And then I'll look at the condition of the actual V-pillars here and see how they look. If they look okay and they're nice and black and I can gloss them up, I'll just leave them that way. That'll be fine. Mirrors have to come off. These are carbon mirrors. They need to be sanded down, re-cleared. Hood has got some oxidization, so that needs to be sanded down and cleared. Headlights, oxidization, need to be sanded down and cleared. Then I need to change the fluids, swap the transmission mount and throwout bearing, and detail it, polish everything up, make it nice and pretty. The side skirt over here, let me see if I can carefully go back here and show you. The side skirt right here, I believe, no? Not, oh yeah, right here, okay. As you can see, is cracked on the bottom. So I'll take this off. I'm gonna fix this fiberglass, and then I'll respray that black there. So I want the next owner to have the best car possible. This is a great car. It's like I said, it's the best car that I own. So with a little bit of tweaks, it can be darn near perfect. I also want to space these wheels out. I have spacers for them. It'll be, a half-hour job to throw them on, but this is a Urus GTR wide body kit that was installed by Urus in Japan. I want to make full use of those wide body fenders. So that's the plan for this. Tonight, now, like I mentioned, I need to start dealing with the angle, the dangle, if you will, of this engine. So if we come look at it from the side here, from pretty much the bottom of the frame rail right here, you can see that the exhaust comes down at an angle and it's pointing more and more to the ground the further back it goes, because that engine is not sitting at 0 degrees. It's not sitting level. And the further back you get, the more pronounced it is. So what I want to do tonight is prop up the engine with a jack, or not the engine necessarily, but the actual subframe. And I want to pull one of the subframe bolts out to figure out how long it is and the thread pitch. And then what I'll do is I will order 4 bolts, well, times 3. So 4 sets of bolts, 3 sets. What? See, I have a cold. I can't think straight. 3 sets of 4 bolts. One that's a 1/4 inch longer, 1/2 inch longer and 1 inch longer than the factory ones because I have 1/4 inch, 1/2 inch, and 1 inch blocks that I'm going to make into subframe spacers. And by doing that, regardless of which one I end up using, I will have the correct bolts for it. My plan this weekend is to actually get that subframe spaced. And so what that should do is by lowering the subframe, it'll flatten out the angle of the engine. In addition to that, I'm gonna have to cut and weld the transmission brace that I made. And in doing so, I can raise the transmission up as well by about 1/4 to 3/8 of an inch. And so both those things should help level the engine. Now, if we look at the engine a second, it's not actually that far off. So, looking at the ground here a second, and the ground is pretty much 0. Looking at this guy, though, at an angle, is pretty much at 0, okay? So we can assume the frame is more or less 0. So if we look at the top of the engine, and I know that's not the best place to do it, but just, you can look at it from the side and see it's leaning. So let's just do it this easy way a second. And if we kind of put something here like this, we can see that we're about 6 degrees tilted back. So, looking at this, looks pretty similar to what we're seeing down here with the exhaust, where it's just kind of slowly tilting back the further back it gets. I don't think it's going to need to tilt down very far. I don't think I'm gonna have to use that full 1 inch spacer. I'm hoping that 1/4 inch or 1/2 inch will do in conjunction with lifting the transmission. But I don't know. So I'll measure those bolts tonight, get the new ones ordered, and then come this weekend, I'll have to drain the coolant system again because it will put pressure on this lower coolant hose, so I gotta take that off. Take that out, make the actual subframe spacers, lower the engine, slot them in, put it back up, and try my different combinations to see what I get. It is a job that is intimidating to me, but like everything, I know that if I just get started and do it, it's not gonna be that big of a deal. So let's get to measuring quick, and then I'll order the parts I need. I got the bolts off. They're kind of mounted with this plate here. Yeah, this is all one piece, which is fine. Using my thread pitch gauge here, I can see that this is a M12 by 1.25. So if I want to keep the same pitch, that's what I've got to get. And then by using my micrometer, zeroed out to millimeters, we can see this one, if I could use my hands decently, is right around 110 millimeters. So it's like 108. I pulled it back a little bit. So M12 by 1.25 by 110 millimeters. Now, I don't know what I'm gonna do about this thing here. I like the idea of it. I could cut a strip of metal to kind of act as the same thing. I don't think I've got room for washers. Maybe I do. But this is roughly 3 mil thick. So I'm gonna assume that I can fit some washers down in there. It'll be tight. But if not, I've got some scrap metal from which I can cut a strip. So M12 by 1.25 by 110 millimeters. Okay, good. As you can see, I made a very high-tech and specific magical note. So I'm not gonna forget. That was all I had planned for tonight. I'm gonna go back inside and order those bolts and nuts and washers and stuff now. I'll come back out to the garage this weekend, which for you guys will be, 10 seconds. and start fiddling with subframe spacers. Yeah, so we'll be back right about now. It is a few days later. There we go. It is a number of degrees colder. Thank you, Minnesota springtime weather. And we're back in the garage. I got the bolts for the subframe in 3 different sizes here. 3? 2. 2 different sizes, I guess. I forgot, it was a while ago. They have the same thread pitch as the stock one, so I can use the stock nuts. Some shorter for 1/2 inch and 1/4 inch, and longer if I need to use the 1 inch. So, what I'm gonna do is go under the car and loosen up the transmission mount bolts that go from my mount to the actual transmission. I'm gonna loosen those up to give them the extra 1/4 inch or so wiggle room, and then I'm gonna pry something to space that up about 1/4 inch. So it'll be able to kind of pivot a little bit and wiggle around because it's not tight. And from there, I can use my motorcycle jack, just back there somewhere, and I can support the engine from below, take off the existing bolts. I'll put the long bolts on first, and I'll just kind of begin lowering it until it sits as flat as it can. I'm going for the best I can get. Oh, I will also, before I do that, need to once again drain my coolant. My favorite thing. Wish me luck. I got my little digital level out, and I zeroed it on the lift, which is up against the frame rails. No, the pinch welds, sorry, the pinch welds. So I'm not gonna say it's perfectly level, but it's a good starting point. When I put the other level indicator on top of this, it said about 6 degrees. This has about 6 degrees. So I think it's a good starting point. I am going to now take this and go into the car and raise the transmission up to where I think it could be. And we'll see what it looks like. Oh, actually, you know what? Check one more place first. Check one more place first. I don't know how I'm gonna get you guys down there with me, but let's figure it out. It should show about the same reading on the back of the exhaust flange, I think. There we go. On the back of the exhaust flange here, we're pretty close. It was at what, 6 point something up top? We're at 5.6 down here. So while down here, I can jack up the transmission and kind of compare what progress I can make just by moving the transmission. So we'll do that next. Oh, it's got a magnet. There you go. Isn't that nice? Okay. Terrifyingly, the transmission bolts were not at all tight. I must not have tightened them down when I was working on it last. So, what I will do now, oh, forgot the wood, dang it. Back. All right, so I'm gonna try and get the jack somewhere over here. Lower it first. Okay. Right about here. Okay. All right, so let's see what we can do here. How far can we go before we start causing problems? I don't know. Let's see. And we still got about a finger width in there. I must be pressing up against something because that's kind of where it's stopping. So perhaps the training tunnel. So I can go to about 4.6 before I start hitting the training tunnel. Which, okay, that's interesting. That's good information to have. So about 1 degree of adjustment back here. Okay. Let's lower this guy back down for now. All right. That's a good start. It's a good data point, I guess you could say. There's just no good place to put this right now. So next, I will drain the transmission fluid. Let's do that. Where do you guys want to watch this mess from? Right about here, perhaps. Yeah, that's a pretty good view of what this mess is going to be. Now I have left the cap on up top in hopes of perhaps that slowing down the flow. I wonder if I have a bottle out here. I have a clever idea, but I need a bottle. I've made this little, I don't know what you want to call it, who cares? This thing that should hopefully block it so that as the coolant comes in, it goes down instead of shooting out. Let's see if it works somehow. Okay, well, first problem with my amazing coolant tools, it doesn't fit. So that's good. Is there a way I could cram this up here somehow and make it fit? It doesn't have to be pretty. This has to kind of be in there. Okay, that actually works quite well. Hup. Okay. But still got the cap on top. When I crack that, I'm guessing we're gonna see this thing start flowing. I'm looking at my little drainulator. I don't know, it's at as good an angle as I can get it. So let's see what happens. I tell you what, save for a little bit of splatter just from liquid dropping a distance, that was pretty good. I think that might be the way to do this. Okay, let this drain for a bit. And then I will take off the thermostat housing, which is leaking a little bit. I think I'm just going to remove that gasket that's on there and then use RTV when I put it back on. We'll see if that gets me any better results. Coolant has been drained, which is great. I pulled the thermostat housing off. It's really interesting, the RTV that was on the housing itself, like look at this, it didn't really adhere to the housing at all. So Obviously, that's probably why it's had a couple drips there. I think I'm just gonna need to get a different RTV housing, or a thermostat housing, which is kind of annoying. Or perhaps when I take it off again, I can sand the outside of that and the bottom of it to give it some tooth to grab onto. I don't know. But either way, so now what I'll do, I move my bucket out of the way. I'm gonna haul over the motorcycle jack. I'll probably lower the car down one notch on the quick jack here. Apply upward pressure with the motorcycle jack on the cross member. Swap the bolts for the long bolts. And then start lowering them down. So there's a 1/4 inch of space, and then see if that gives me better results, 1/2 inch, 1 inch, etc. Until I kind of get what I want. Man, besides banging the crap out of my finger, it's crazy to see the car at this height. It's been up on the highest setting of the quick jack for so long. It's gonna be even crazier to see it on the ground at some point. Okay, so we're back down. Let's get the jack underneath here. I've got it snugged up on the actual subframe. So let's go over here. We'll take off the bolts for the subframe and attach the longer bolts. Okay, I saw the subframe sink a little when I loosened this bolt. So I added some more pressure with the jack. I might go a little more just to be safe. Just because I see a bit of a space there, and I don't like that. Okay, so now, while I have a moment, I'm gonna run a tap through these bolts just to clean up the threads. So I've lowered it down 1/4 inch, and I can already see there is a noticeable difference. Let's see how much of a difference there actually is. Maybe I'm just imagining things, but it feels like there's a difference here. So we were right around 6 before. Let me make sure this is still leveled to the thing. It is, good. Okay, so we're at about 5.7, which with raising the transmission should put us at about 4.7. So that's a noticeable difference. Let's try a 1/2 inch next. The challenge we're having with this side here is the exhaust runners are hitting the subframe. Well, the frame, I guess. So we're at a 1/2 inch now, just barely. It might add some clearance when I lift the transmission. I'm gonna lower that side. We'll lift the transmission and see what we get. We're at 1/2 inch all around now. And that gets us to 5.3, so from 5.7 to about 5.3. I'm gonna lift, see if I can balance this there. I'm gonna lift the transmission a little bit and we'll see what that gets us. Transmission lifted and we're at 4.3, 4.4. That's better. Okay. But the point of this is to kind of correct the angle of the exhaust, and it's still down a bit more than I'd like. So the annoying thing is, because the headers over here are up against the frame, I don't know that I'm gonna be able to lower it the full inch on this side to test that out. It's better, but it's still not where I want it to be. And the reason, by the way, the reason for all this is because I'm using the AR5 transmission. It has a bigger bell housing, and it just, without cutting the transmission tunnel, I can't jack the transmission up enough without lowering the engine down. I wonder if I'm just going to have to end up going with a T56. It's not ideal, it's expensive, and I'd have to pull the engine out again, but we'll see. We'll see, let's try an inch. So it's about 3/4 of an inch down now, and we're at 3.94. Let me see if I've got any more wiggle room in the transmission to lift it up. This is as far down as I can get it without either bashing in the intake runners or cutting the frame there. So let's see. It is as far up as it goes, and we're about 3.68. So let me let you peek here a second. And the reason we're doing all this is that the exhaust doesn't hang down so far. So this isn't actually terrible. You know, it's not great. So let me see if I can kind of get you level. Okay, yep, so you're about level with the frame rail here. A little bit below it because we're on the, well, yeah, try this. There, that's about level with the frame rail. And you can see it's sticking down in the back, maybe, I don't know, 1.5 inches. It's not terrible. It's just not ideal. So, what do? I think about it, is what I do. I need to think of, is it worth cutting the frame? Honestly, I don't think if I weld in some patches there, it's going to harm the actual strength of it that much. I'm not gonna cut all the way through, I'm gonna notch the top really. I'll notch the top and then add some reinforcement. So it's not gonna be the worst thing in the world, but it will be a pain because I need to pull the headers off both sides. Well, the header off here, the Y pipe again. Maybe that'll give me enough room to get in there and cut that, I don't know. If I have to pull the engine out, that's a whole other thing. So I'm not sure. I think what I'll do is pick up some 3/4 inch by 1.5 inch aluminum stock, and I will put that in and maybe see if I can tap the headers a little bit to add a little bit of extra clearance before I start cutting the frame. And then snug that all up and just see what I've got. I'll have to set it on the ground to see what I've got, which is kind of interesting because the car hasn't been on the ground in months. But yeah, I think that's what I'm gonna do. So just one quick thing before I call it a night. It's hard to see just by looking at it. I can tell there's a difference, but it's hard to notice by looking at it. But where it's very noticeable is here on the thermostat housing. So maybe it's hard to see in the dark, but the thermostat housing now sits 1.5 inches above the actual place where it mounts. And that's significant. That means this thing is 1.5 inches lower in the front. Oh, wow. And the very top of the intake plenum looks to be just maybe 1/4 inch above the fender line. That's pretty exciting. That's cool. That means that if I can get it down another 1/4 inch with the actual inch spacers, I could potentially be able to close the hood. I'd probably have to cut the hood supports on the inside, but I wouldn't have to cut a hole in the hood to make it all fit. That's interesting. Okay. I'll pick up 3/4 inch and then 1 inch spacers, and we'll see what that does. So it's a couple days later, and I got my aluminum blocks in. These are roughly 2 inch by 1 inch by, I think it's like 7 point something. I wasn't terribly concerned about the exact dimensions so long as it was larger than the bolts. And I kind of wanted to show you my process for making these subframe spacers. So the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to draw a line down the middle. It doesn't have to be perfect. I'm going to measure here in a second. I just want black marker there in the middle so that when I scratch it up, it's easier to see. If you've got some like that blue stuff that machinists use, I can't think of what that stuff's called, but that would probably work even better than a Sharpie. Okay, so I've marked the middle, and now I'm going to score it with my cheapo calipers here. I set my calipers for 1 inch because it's 2 inches wide, and I want it right in the middle. So I'm just going to drag the tip right along there, and that's going to be on my black mark so it's easier to see. Then what I did was I measured the width of these two here, the outside and the inside. By measuring the outside and the inside and subtracting 1 width, I got the distance from center to center, which comes up to 138 millimeters. So I'm going to lock in my calipers at 138 millimeters. I'm going to kind of eyeball it to where this is now sitting roughly in the center, or to where these will be centered. And then I'm going to scrape one side and scrape the other side. And now, I don't know if you can see, but I've got two very faint crosses to where the center meets and the 138 millimeters meets. So I'll take my punch here and I'm going to punch it right where those meet. Right there. I got a nice little dot there. Oh, almost put the wrong spot. And right there. So now I've got 2 dots. This one's probably a millimeter off, but I'm gonna drill it just a little bit big, so it should be fine. Okay, next, over to the drill press. Now I do not have 12 millimeter drill bits, so I am making do. Aluminum cuts really easy. I'm gonna add just a little bit of something there to give it some lubrication. Normally you'd want to clamp the workpiece down. I'd recommend doing so. I'd also recommend, you know, cleaning off your area so it sits flat. Don't be an idiot like me. I'm gonna get my drill aligned. There we go. Okay. Great if it came off my thing. There we go. All right. So now I've got 4 holes drilled at a size that's a little bit too small. So I'm gonna go up a drill bit next and just kind of keep creeping up until the bolts fit through. Well, it might be about a millimeter off, but we'll see if that's okay at the very bottom. If not, well, then I've got to buy a bit bigger drill bit. I'm going to chamfer the edges a little bit, and this one's a lot better. Okay. I'll chamfer the edges with a hand drill here a second. So there we go. Some very simple subframe spacers. Yes, you can go out and buy fancy custom ones for your project, and maybe your project is more complex than a 240 and it needs something a fancy shape. But if it doesn't, these 2 blocks cost me a total of, I don't know, $24. So rather than spend 100 and something, 24 bucks. There you go. Okay, so remember, of course you do, it happened for you like 2 minutes ago. The best we got last time was around, what, 3 point something? Let me zero this out again. Where's my zero button? There it is. Okay. It's looking pretty darn flat. Let's see. Okay, you know, it's not perfect, but 2.7 degrees is pretty darn good. This is with the 1-inch subframe spacers, and the transmission lifted all the way up. I'll try to lower the transmission about 1/4 of an inch, but this is probably right about where this is going to sit. And it's a huge improvement from where it was. The engine looks more or less flat now, which is cool. In fact, why don't I throw the fenders on, or the other fender on, and drag a string across it, and we'll see where the engine sits now in relationship to the top of the fenders, or the hood more or less. This is a big difference. Not one of these strings is touching, and this area here is where it was the highest. Now, does that mean the hood will actually close? I don't know. If we look at the underside of the hood, let's measure back from the front to, it's gonna be 2.5 finger widths here. So we've got kind of 1, 2, so that's gonna put that right in this area here. Now I can still kind of trim these out to make some more clearance if I have to. I'd rather not if I don't have to. I guess I could try and set it on top, and there's no harm in that. I'll move those coils out of the way so they're not kind of in the way. And of course, my wonderful brake lines. But let me just set it on top, I guess, and see what happens. That's a huge improvement. Yeah. Oh. Well, let me tell you, this is kind of unexpected. Now, granted, the fenders aren't sitting exactly where they should be yet, so I can't align the hood and any of that, but the fact is, you hear anything hitting? There, that's where it hits. I've got probably 3/8 of an inch with the latch bottomed out and the back sitting back. The hood fits without cutting it. Holy crap. That's awesome. So I guess really the next step is I need to go back to beating the crap out of the exhaust header to see if I can make that one runner stop hitting. And if I can, fantastic. If I can't, then I'm gonna have to notch the frame a little bit. That said, I think that's where I'm gonna end this episode. It might not seem like a lot got done, but I put a lot of hours into all this crap here. And I'm really excited about it. Those subframe spacers work great. I need to cut and weld the exhaust mount, but that's not the biggest of deals. In fact, I could probably even cheese it and just add washers on top if I wanted to. It's stupid, but I could. And then after that, I can get to work on the exhaust so that when I'm actually tuning this thing or idling it in the garage, it's not blowing a bunch of crap in my face and the exhaust is actually exiting out the back like it should. Man. Well, thank you guys for hanging out with me and working on my car. Thank you for the inspiration you give me when you leave comments and give me likes and thumbs up. All the advice is so much more appreciated than I think a lot of you can imagine. I really do appreciate all the advice you give. I feel like I should have like Mr. Rogers music going. But I am being serious. I really appreciate all of you. If you enjoy hanging out with me and watching me struggle and try new things, or you like 240s or car builds, please subscribe down below. Leave a comment if you have advice, and stick around for the next one. Also, I hope you guys have time this week to get out into your garage and make a little bit of progress on your project. Thanks, everybody.